Hello and welcome to my channel. In this tutorial we are going to talk about JSON Web Tokens and how to use them in Deno and how to make authorization in Deno simple. So let's get into it. So what is JSON Web Token? It's an open standard that defines a compact and self-contained way for securely transmitting information between parties as a JSON object. So, for example, JSON Web Tokens can be signed using a secret with the HMAC algorithm or a public-private key pair using RSA. And one of the scenarios where you can use JSON Web Tokens is authorization. For example, if you have a protected route in your application and you want to allow the access to that route only for authorized users. So this is the most common scenario for using JWT. And once the user is logged in, each subsequent request will include the JWT, allowing the user to access routes and resources that are permitted with that token. So it's also used in information exchange because JWTs are a good way of securely transmitting information between parties, because JWTs can be signed and hence you can know and you can be sure that the senders are those who say they are. So the structure of JSON Web Tokens, actually it consists of three parts separated by a dot. The parts are the header, the payload, and the signature, and hence a JWT looks like something like this. First part of some characters, dot. Second part, which is the payload, dot, and the secret signed. So the header consists of two parts: the type of the token, which is JWT in this situation, and the sign-in algorithm being used, such as the HS512. For example, it looks like this: the algorithm here, and which is the name of the algorithm, and the type of the token, which is JWT. And this part is then base64 URL encoded to form the first part, the header. The payload, it contains the claims, and the claims are statements about an entity and additional info. There are three types of claims. For example, the registered claims, public and private claims. And for example, you can see here the ISS, for example, the issuer, which is the issuer, XP, which is the expiration time, and sub, which is the subject, etc. The payload, an example of a payload could look like this. Here you have the subject, which is something, and the name, for example, which can be anything. You can put Agent Smith, for example, some data. Okay, this could be, for example, the name, the combination of the username and email address, for example. And then if you want to invalidate the JSON token after some time, then you add the EXP claim and you put some time in milliseconds. Here, for example, in milliseconds combined with the time in milliseconds from the 1st of January of 1970. Okay, yeah, I mean it's complicated a bit, but this is how it should be done. The payload is then also base64 URL encoded, and you need to be careful that your payload doesn't include any sensitive information, because that part is visible to anyone. So don't put anything critical there. No passwords, nothing sensitive. Okay, and then we have the signature, and the signature is done like this. It involves the algorithm you are going to use, and you input the base64 URL encoding of the header plus a dot plus the base64 URL encoding of the payload, and then you insert the secret phrase you want to use to sign your token. Here is an example of a JSON Web Token, how it looks like. So you have the header, for example, what we said. The algorithm is this, the type is this JWT, and the payload, for example, is the subject this, and the expiration time is the number of milliseconds from January the 1st, 1970, plus, for example, 60,000 milliseconds, which means a minute. And you enter, for example, a name, which is Agent Smith, and something else. And the secret, for example, what is this quacking sound? I mean, I've just imagined this. And the resulting JSON Web Token would be something like this. So let me go back. Yeah, so, whoops, not this. So let's go like header, payload. Yeah. So so this is how a JSON Web Token looks like. So the steps that you need to do in order to create a of your web application to use a JSON Web Token is that the client receives a login page, and the client enters his or her credentials and submits them, and the server then verifies the credentials, and if the credentials are okay, it sends back a JSON Web Token to the client. It doesn't matter how the way the server sends that. There is no specification on that. And the client stores that token somewhere, preferably not in the cookies nor in the web storage, because this can be accessed if an attacker attempts to do that. So it's probably the best idea to store the token in memory somewhere, in a variable. So after that, the client must send the JSON Web Token with each request in the authorization header prefixed with the bearer word to the server, and the server then will verify whether this JSON Web Token is valid or not, and if it is valid, then it will allow access to certain resources on the application. Like, for example, if you have an endpoint called posts, and you only want your, I mean, in a social network, for example, I don't know, like Instagram or Facebook, you have only registered users and logged in at the same time are allowed to access the posts, for example, endpoint or something like that. So how do you do that? Well, you can do that using the JSON Web Tokens. So in the next part of the video, we are going to see an implementation of these techniques. So see you then. So here we are going to do the practical part of implementation for the JSON Web Tokens. And I have an empty folder here that actually not completely empty. I have only created a repository on GitHub, which you will get the link for in the description of the tutorial. And I have created a VS Code folder that contains the settings for this project, which will be used in Deno, of course. So you will get those as well. And there is a launch JSON file, which you can use if you need to debug the application. So this is needed if you want to place breakpoints and start debugging your application if for some reason, if something doesn't go well. So you will get all those in the repository once I upload the code. So let's get into it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to define first a set of users. And for that, I'm going to create a db JSON file, and that db JSON file will be containing a bunch of fictional users, like username Donald Duck, and his password is Quack. The JWT will be nothing at the start. A username Wimpy, his password is Hamburger, because he always loves hamburgers. And of course the JWT is 0, is nothing, and another username which is Daffy Duck, Smartaf for the password and an empty JWT. Okay, so let's save this, and I'm going to create also another file, and that file will be called articles, and this will be the part of the data that only the authorized users have access to. So articles, and I'm going to place some news here. For example, I will be having a news array, and that news array will be having containing objects. Each object will be having a property called headlines, and the value of that headlines will be some news of some sort. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and after that I am going to declare a types file. So I'm going to say types. I'm going to declare some types I'm going to use inside the application, and that types application, that's the types file will be containing a type for the user and a type for the article. So export type user, and that user will be the user, of course, the username, and that username is a string. It will be having also the password, and the password is a string as well, and of course a JWT or a JWT token, which is also a string. And I'm also going to create another type, which is article, and that article will be having headlines, which is a string. Okay, so I'm going to save this. Of course, this is only for our example. This is not secure. I mean, you will never have to store your passwords, users' passwords and credentials inside a text file. You need to encode that, encrypt that, and you want to take care of the security measures on that, because if someone breaches your application, they can have access to the text files and gain access to the passwords and credentials. But for our example, because we are trying to implement the JSON Web Tokens in a simple way, just to show you how they look like, this should be enough. So we have the types, and now we are going to implement the main file. So main TS. I'm going to use the Opine framework library that I have used in my previous tutorial on creating a REST server using Deno. So I'm going to use that because it's easy and because it is similar to the Express framework from the Node.js ecosystem. And I'm going to use the Opine framework, and I'm going to use the JSON middleware and the URL encoded middleware for processing form data. But you're going to see that in a bit. And of course, I'm going to also use the JWT module from Deno land. Which is a third-party module for JSON Web Tokens. And for that, I'm going to use the create function, the verify function, and this is a helper function called getNumericDate, which is going to return to you the number of seconds or milliseconds you enter, depending on the date you enter as a parameter. So, and of course we are going to import our types from the types.ts file, and which is user and article, and these are from the types.ts file. Okay, now we are going to define, actually we are going to read the JSON files, which means the articles files and the DB JSON files. So for that we are going to say const db, and we are going to read them and parsing them using Deno read text file synchronously, and we are going to set the path for that, which is db why are you showing me this? Yeah, so db dot json. Okay, and the same thing will be for articles. I'll copy this. And I'm going to specify the articles JSON file. Okay, now we are going to so now we are going to define an application of type opine. So we are going to initialize that, and after that we are going to tell the application to use the JSON middleware, and also to use the URL encoded middleware, because I'm going to send form data. Yeah, of course I could create an application, I mean only the backend part, and send the requests using the using Postman, for example. But I want to show you how you can create simple web applications using Deno as well. Yeah, I mean in future tutorials I'm going to create fully blown React and Deno tutorials together. But for now we will stick to simplicity while exposing features from Deno. So I'm going to define a get request endpoint, and that get request will go to login, and we are going to be having a request response objects. So, and I'm going to say console log received a get login request. Okay, and here I'm going to say this for the response. Okay, and a user is attempting to log in, so I'm going to send them an HTML that will contain that is containing a form of some sort, so they can log in. For that I'm going to use the ES6 strings, and I'm going to say div, oops, so let's say h1 welcome to this JWT tutorial, and h2 please log in. And after that I'm going to send form, and this form is going to be using the post method. So post, and the action is going to the login endpoint. So the login endpoint is going to take care of the login process. So I'm going to enter a label here, so label, and that label will be for we will be having two input boxes, one for the username and the other one for the password, and we are going to name the username as a username, so username, and here I'm going to say enter your username and input. This input will be of type text, and the ID would be something like username, and the name itself would be also be username, and I guess that's fine. We will enter a line break here twice. Okay, now we will be having another label here, and that label will be for password. Enter your password. Okay, and I will copy this. So the type is password, the ID is password, and the name is password, and after that the submit button. So input and the type is submit, and the value will be login. Okay, so I guess we are fine here. Let me just check this. After I will make the application first before I run this. I will make the application listen at 5,000. So we can probably start looking at this. So app get for the root endpoint request response. I'm going just to say the response set status 200 and send, let's say I'm going to send something like h2 hello and log in to continue. We can try this now. So I'm going to Deno run, allow read, allow net main ts. Okay, so this guy is running. Let me check. So local host 5,000. Yeah, so it's working. And if I go to the endpoint login, for example, yeah, so here we go. We have our application, it's running. So now I'm going to, yeah, we received a get login request, so this is okay, and now we are going to implement this functionality. before we continue, yeah, I'm going to implement the registration phase. So I'll put here app get, because if you don't have a user, then you want him to register himself, and after he gets registered, he can then log in using his own credentials. When he logs in, then he can receive the JSON Web Token. I can go without that, but for the fun of it, we are going to do it. So register, this is another endpoint, and it will be receiving a request, response, tuple, and I'm going to send this form. I'm going to copy that without repeating myself. So I'm going to say please register, and I'm going to send them a form with the method of post, and the action will be dealt with using the register endpoint. And I'm sending exactly the same form as previously, but I'm not going to deal with confirming whether the password is the same or not. I mean, when you enter your form data in a registration form, you usually have 3 input fields: one for the username, the other one for the password, and the third one to confirm your password. But I'm not going to do that because it's not the point of the tutorial. So we will just send the password once during registration without handling any error. So yeah, let me check this. Oops. Let me start this again. Okay. So let me see if register is okay. Yeah, so register, the register form is working as well, and okay, so it's working. So let's implement something. We will implement now the registration process. So I'm going to implement a post, because the user is going to post their credentials to the endpoint. So we have register and request response. All right. So what is going to happen here? There is a new user, and this is of type user, and they are going to receive what? They are going to receive the username, which is the request, the body of the request, and the username property. Other than that, there is also the password, which is the request, the body, and the password property. And there is also the JWT, the JWT, which is not set at this moment. If it is a new user, then it's they are just entering their username and password, and they will be receiving a JWT later when they log in. What we are going to do now is that we are going to call the DB array, which is, as you've seen, this contains the array of users here. So we have each user is an object of this form. So we are going to say get me the array of users, and in that array push the new user, and new user, and that should be it. We are going to console log the new user just in case. And what is going to happen here is that I'm going to redirect the user to login to the login form. So I'm going to say response redirect, okay, and I'm going to send the status of 301, which indicates a redirection, and I'm going to send the endpoint that is going to handle the redirection, which is the login. Oops. Okay. So okay, let's check that. So it's working. Let's go to the register. Okay, now let's enter something. Let's say, I don't know, Mickey Mouse, hi there. Okay, so I'm going to enter this hi there, and I'm going to press the login button, and that should, oops, this is login. Okay, I'm going to change that. So yeah, so we received a login request after redirection. So if you look at what we have received the username Mickey Mouse and the password hi there, and the JWT is set to nothing at this moment. So it's in the post request. Actually, I need to say console log received a post register request. Okay, so and the form is actually register. Okay, so let's try that again. So okay, so I'm going to go to the register. Please register. So let's say Mickey Mouse, hi there. And before I press the register button, watch this. Okay, so we received a post register request, and the user, the new user is Mickey Mouse with the password hi there, and the JWT isn't set, and it redirects us to the login form after that. Okay, so now we are going to implement this. We are going to implement the post request to the login form. So we have get register, post register, and get login, and we are going to implement post login. So post login, and again request response, and here we are going to this is the main actually the method of the application. So first let's output the request. So let's say received a post login request, and here we are going to read the data from the request, which means the username, and the username is the request body username const password, which is the request body, oops, password, and I'm going to define a result, and that result is of type user, and that user, we are now going to try to find our user. I mean, a user is attempting to log in and he's sending their credentials, and we are going to verify whether these credentials exist or not. So we have db users find. We are going to find, and if you remember, the find algorithm in the arrays object actually takes a parameter and a callback, and it tries to find the result that fulfills the callback. So that callback will be receiving a user of type user, and it's going to be returning the username equals the username of above this, okay, that we have received. And oops, where is and the user password must be also equal to the password that we have received from the user, this one. Okay, so whenever this condition is fulfilled, that means we have found our user in the array of users, and it will return me the result, the user that we are seeking. Okay, now we are going to say if the result is okay, if the result exists, then we are going to create a JWT, and we are going to save it, and we are going to send it back to the user. So const JWT, and this is a promise, create, and this create function is from the JWT module. So this one is the one that creates the JWT for us. So we are going to say use the actually it's a object, not a JSON. So use the HS, actually 512, and the type is JWT. And now I'm going to specify the payload. The payload will be the user name, which is the result that we have got, and the username, and the expiration will be get numeric date. Let's say it will expire in 2 minutes, so 260. Okay, so I guess we are almost there. I'll put this on another line, and after that I'm going to sign it with the password. Result password. Okay, so this should create a JWT for us, and after that I'm going to send this thing back, which means I'm going to say JWT promise. When this is done, when this is successfully finished, so I'm going to say JWT, which is of type string, result. I'm going to assign the JWT to the user in the database. So so the user can also have their web token assigned inside the database. And I'm going to say the status, set status to be, in this case, 201. And I'm going to send let's send something div h1. So let's say, I don't know, here is your token, and inside a paragraph I'm going to say what? I'm going to send the JWT. Okay, so the user will receive the token back to the client side. And just let us check whether console table, let's see, db users, let's just verify after that that the user is there or not. And in case of any error, we are going to catch the errors. So e is string, and we are going to say that we have encountered a server error of some sort, which means we are going to set the status as 500, and we are going to send something like h2 oops, something bad had happened. Okay, so, and on our side, on the server side, we are going to actually display the error. Okay, so this in case we have got a successful user and something bad had happened, so it must be related to the server. But in case we don't have a user at all with these credentials, so we are going to say something else. We are going to say else. I'm going to say response set status. Well, this is the 404 status in this case. We don't have the user, so we are going to send a message telling the user to register first. So send okay, let's say div, oops, div and h2, and let's say sorry, user not found, please try again or register. Okay, so I guess this guy okay. All right, so I think we are done here. I'm going to restart the application and see what happens. So let's go to yeah, let's say we are going to, I don't know, let's try to get Donald Duck, and his password is what? Quack, I think. So Quack. Alright, so yes, received a post login request. So I have that, and this is the JSON Web Token that we have received. So it works. Now I want to go to the articles, but I still can't go there because if I go to articles, we don't have the articles endpoint defined yet. We are going to define that. So in this case, we are going to say app get and articles. So request response like this, and the articles endpoint is going to actually allow us to see the news. So in this case, I can say first console log received get articles request. Okay, now I'm going to declare a variable authorize or not, and I'm going to check whether the header contains the request header contains the authorization header. So request, and in the headers part of the request contains all the needed headers, and if you want to access those headers, you need to use the get function. So the get function, and you tell what is the name of the header that you want to access. So it's authorization, okay, and you should receive an array, and that array will continue to contain two words, the bearer prefix and the token itself. So I'm going to say response, actually no, I'm going to say if not auth, which means we didn't receive anything, or auth is kinda empty, then this is bad, and we are going to set status as unauthorized access, and we are going to send again, we are going to send something like div h1, and I'm going to say unauthorized access, please log in first. Okay, so I guess this one is okay. Otherwise, okay, otherwise the token is there, and we can allow access to the endpoints, to the articles endpoint in this case. So in this case, we are going to say const get the token, and the token is accessed from the auth array above, that is, which we are going to split on a space. The token is coming in this form. It's bearer and a space, then the token something. Okay, so we are going to say split this on the space, and we are not going to use the bearer. We don't need that. We only need the token. So split on that, and get the second element of the array. So const result is db users find. What we are going to do is we are going to send the token to the array of users, and we are going to try to find whether this token exists already or not. So we will be having a user element of type user, and and we are going to return whether the user JWT equals the token that we have already received. So okay, so if result is okay, then we are going to allow the access finally. So in this case, const payload promise, and we are going to verify. Remember, the verify is the function that we have imported from the JWT module, and it verifies whether the token is okay or not. So yeah, so verify, and that verify is going to take the JWT token and the password of the user and the algorithm that we have used, which in this case is the HS 512. Okay, and payload promise. When this is done, so then payload. When this is done, we are going to display what we have received, and we are going to say payload is payload, and we are going to define a list of articles. So const list, because we want to send some HTML back to the user. So in that case, it looks kind of pretty. Well, sort of. We are going to say articles, and the articles is that variable that we have imported from the articles JSON. So articles is news. It has a property called news, and that news is an array, and that array has a function called map. So what we are going to do, we are going to, for each article, we are going to create a list element. So article of type article, and we are going to return a list element, and that list element contains what? Contains the article headlines. Yeah, exactly. So after that, let me check. Yeah, so after that we will be creating an element called HTML, and this HTML element is going to contain an unordered list element, just the opening tag, because we are going to build that. So why are you, yeah, string, what? Okay, forget it. So we have to cycle through the list elements now. So we are going to go through each element here, and list dot length. Okay, we are going to do what? We are going to say HTML actually, yeah, list I. So we are going to add the list elements to the HTML that we are going to inject later, and after we finish, we say we close the the unordered list element. So something like that. Okay. Oops. Yeah. So after we have done that, we will be sending the HTML for this. So send, which is going to be a div, and we are going to say today's news. Okay, and this is going to contain the HTML that we have built. Okay, in case this is not true, which means the promise encountered an error, so we are going to say what? Result JWT, invalidate the JWT. Yeah, because if verification wasn't correct, then the JWT is not valid at this point, and we need to invalidate that. Hence, we make it empty and we store it back to the database, user database. Okay, so in this case, we say console. Let's use table db users, and we send to the user something like h2 JWT has expired, please re-login. Okay, and for our part we console error the error. Okay, I think this is done. Yeah, there is only the part if else. This is okay, this is okay. I guess we are good. Yeah. Yeah, okay, if else, yeah, here. Else, in case there is no result, which means the user isn't there. So we say result set status not found, and we tell the user that send. Okay, we tell them that sorry guys, but you have to do better. So error, no such user, please register, or try again, never mind. Okay, so I guess this is it. Let's try the application. I'm going to stop it. Actually, before I do that, I need to create a REST file. So I'm going to create one HTTP. For this, I'm using an extension called REST client. Okay, this is an extension that enables you to. It's something like Postman, but a simpler to use. So you use that. You create a request like this in this format. So you create the command, the URL, the protocol, the headers, and the body, for example. So in this case, I'm going to use that And I'm going to copy this. Of course, this token isn't valid, so I'm going to delete it. And we are going to insert a fresh token here and try it. So let's go through the registration phase. Let's go to the terminal. Okay, so now I'm going to say login. Okay, I'm going to say something, I don't know, DDD something, whatever. So the user isn't there. Sorry, user not found. Please try again or register. Okay, let's go to the register form. I'm going to say Mickey Mouse. Hi there. Yeah, so we have now a user and it's called Mickey Mouse with the password hi there. The JWT is reset and it redirects us to the login after that. So in the login we type Mickey Mouse. Let's say hi there. Okay. And this, oops, go away. And this is the token that we can use. It has a validity of 2 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. Okay, and I'm going to here and place it here with the prefix bearer. So I'm going to place it here and save that, and I'm going to send the request. If I go before that, if I go to the articles, endpoint articles, so it's unauthorized access because this isn't sending the token with the request. But if I use this, if I send the token here, I say send. Oops, not found. No such user. What? Oh, it's yeah, no, wait, something isn't okay here. Let's check that. I think the token isn't saved properly. Post login, promise, set state, send. Result, yeah, it's not saved. Yeah, I think this is an error. Yeah, so Jesus, JWT, this is the one. So let's try it again. Okay, let's go to articles is unauthorized, which is fine. Let's go to login. Let's try a user that we have already implemented, which is Donald Duck and Quack. Okay, so we have this token. That's a new token. So I have to go and copy it here. I'm going to save it. Send request. Yeah, that's okay. And I'm receiving the news. Okay. So this news is the news endpoint is accessible to those who are properly registered. So if I go again to the articles, again, I'm unauthorized because I'm not, that's a different user that is trying to access the endpoint, but only registered users and logged in users have the token, the access token. Okay, so if I wait 2 minutes and try this request again, then I'm not going to be able to see the news. Let me do something else. Let me use another user here. Let's say login, and what users I have? Wimpy. Let's try Wimpy. So Wimpy hamburger. Okay, so I have another token. I'm going to duplicate this, copy. Okay, and I'm going to copy the token and place it here. Okay, so if I try to access the yeah, like this. Okay, right. So if I try to access the articles, the Wimpy can access them. But let me go back to Donald and see if his token is still okay. Okay, his token is still JWT has expired. Okay, so you can see now that if your user isn't active for a certain amount of time, the token gets invalidated and he needs to relog in again, which means you can now implement authorization systems safely using JSON Web Tokens. So this tutorial now is concluded. You understand now how you can implement login systems with authorization to certain parts of your system, and with some security measures like storing your web tokens inside the environment variables, for example, on the server side, or in memory on the client side. It can be actually safe to use. If you like this tutorial, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section and I will get back to you. And this is the end. See you in the next tutorial. Thank you for watching.